Hey YouTube, how you guys doing? My name is Kyle, you know me as Dragonmar, and welcome to a new video. Today will be the start of the Overwatch Basics series. These are competitive guides that intend to go over the fundamentals of competitive play in Overwatch, and we're going to be starting this off with callouts, which are one of the most important pieces of just being a good teammate and working effectively as a team. Now in this video, we're going to start with answering the question of what are callouts, who makes them, how can you make them, and some examples, and then how to get better at them, and then finally we'll just finish it off and we'll sum things up. So I hope you guys enjoy, and I hope you learn something new, and let's get started. Callouts are a crucial part of competitive play in Overwatch, and the reason is that it really helps your team play together better. So the whole purpose of a callout is to provide information. You know, at the end of the day, you have to remember when you're making a callout, the whole goal is you're trying to say something important, and you're trying to say it quickly. You want this stuff to just kind of roll off the tongue, be nice and short and sweet, and because what you're trying to do is help your team prepare for like an upcoming event. If that's a fight, if it's a flanker, you know, if it's ultimates that are coming out, it's important to get this stuff out quickly. You know, communication as a whole is important, right? So you have like going over team comps, changes, strategy, but callouts are a little more real and a little more tactical, and they almost are a skill by themselves, as in you can actually improve at making callouts. And I think that a lot of people get a little scared of making callouts, right? Because, you know, you have to talk to your team, but when you start getting to ranks like Diamond and Masters, it's really almost expected of pretty much every single person on the team to not only have a mic and be listening, but also to make important callouts related to, you know, what's happening in the game. Who makes callouts? Well, I'm glad you asked. So callouts can be made by any player on the team. However, I really do think that certain players are more apt to making callouts. Now, supports generally should be calling things out like ult charge, enemy flank positioning, and sort of important heals to your low health targets. Now, I also think that it's really important for supports to call out anytime they're getting flanked, anytime they have DPS on them in the back line. Call that stuff out, because sometimes as a tank player I don't realize it and I can't help you if I don't know. Now, DPS players I think should call things out like their ult charge, out of position heroes, low targets, and once again flankers. So you sort of see a lot of similarities, right? It's perfectly fine for every single person to call out their ult charge. It's good information for your team to know. Now, tanks, on the other hand, I think have a lot more responsibility, in my opinion, as a tank player. And I do think they should be the main shot caller on the team, if possible, right? You know, I'm going to say this, anyone can make these callouts, but I do think tanks are more suited to sort of lead these teams and to make the majority of them. Because tanks, in my opinion, can call things out like shield charge, ultimate percentages, engagement timings, you know, when to go in, when not to, healing needs, general targets, you know, shot calling, target calling, blocks and denials of enemy ultimates. So you have eating grabs, you have blocking shatters, you have things like dives, charges, and then just so much more that tanks really are the most suited to call out. Once again, any player can make these callouts. I'm not saying you have to be a certain role, but sort of the way I see it in my head and the way I think most people see it is that you sort of have tanks making the majority of the calls, supports, you know, filling in when needed, and then DPS just kind of doing DPS things and calling out, you know, a lot less, more so just low targets. And the reason is that I think that it's more important for DPS to react to the calls and sort of focus the most on just killing people. If your DPS is too focused on making callouts and sort of looking at everything, it might distract them from their actual job, which is incredibly important. So I'd prefer if someone like a tank who has sort of less things they can be doing, more so holding up a shield and starting engagements, I think it's more important for them to call those things out. And as a whole, right, callouts, you have to remember, they're there to clarify your team's objective. They're quick, concise, easy to digest. These are things that should be very, very simple. And one of the most simple things I can think of is a target callout. And the whole purpose of calling targets is to focus your team's damage on one person. And if you don't realize why, it's actually super simple. What happens when multiple people call targets is that your damage gets split. And in the current meta, there's not too much damage to go around, so it's really, really important that you're focusing the same person, because they're going to die quicker, and that's going to allow you to get on the next person and hopefully kill them even quicker. What can happen is if you spread the damage too much, there might not be enough to even kill one person, and if the other team is focusing you down better, guess what? You're going to lose 9 of the 10 times. That is why it's so important to have 1 to 2 people at most making these sort of target calls, so it's very clear who your team is actually fighting. Now that we've covered what callouts are and who makes them, I think it's time to go into some examples and explain exactly how you're going to be doing this. So the most basic way to make a callout, and sort of the key here, is to talk in a clear, loud voice. You don't want to yell things if you don't have to, but it's really important to be loud, because you can't mumble stuff. The worst thing that can happen, and it does happen all the time, is people who are soft-spoken will make a call, and then your team has to ask what the hell they just said because they can't hear them. Overwatch is a loud game, and I think sometimes people forget that. There's a lot of stuff going on, so it's really important to be clear with what you're saying. Also, get to the point. Please be clear and concise when you make your calls. Cut the BS out. You don't have to say, a bajillion different things. Just make things nice and simple. The following clips are going to be examples of callouts during one GM game on Watchpoint Gibraltar that I had recently. I played Ana on this, so not something I normally play, but I actually do enjoy playing her. Regardless, this is going to include good and bad callouts in it. I'm going to be putting text up over the gameplay so you guys can see and easily understand what people are saying and the callouts they're making. I'll try to put a counter up in the corner so you can see how many callouts are being said, and then if something's important, I'll talk about it after the clip. And there's also an example in here of me not being able to hear a callout, and then there's the chaos that ensues afterwards. But this is really important that you guys listen closely to what people are saying, sort of understand when they're saying it, because these are the type of callouts you hear all the time at GM. So this is a good way for you guys to get probably the best examples you're going to get of how to make callouts.
I'm gonna back up. I have no matrix. I'm Back up.
Oh, I'm lagging. Holy fuck.
Oh, Widow's far?
There you go, Hanzo.
Nice.
Hanzo's up. Oh fuck, I think I'm on the map.
I need it behind.
I'm dropping down.
Dude, I don't want.
You're powered up.
Revolve.
Push this.
Wait, who did I give ult to?
Genji.
Oh, fuck.
This is Ren. Okay.
Get back in the fight.
Nice.
Me top behind.
Watch out for
Nice.
Divas one.
Get you low.
I was gonna...
They're all looking at me. It's fine.
I'm gonna
go super
enemy now.
Enemy now.
Hana.
Get trans. Never mind.
Genji blade.
They don't listen. No, Genji. Oh no.
Enemy now.
He got melted.
Genji one.
I just...
One Nana right there. Anna, did you not hear me?
I don't know. What did you say?
I said enemy now.
Ah, fuck. I didn't hear you.
Go away.
Boys, once the card pushes through, it's a hard choke to push through right here.
Yeah.
Okay.
You're going to live.
Who? Am I gonna nano Genji?
I'm going.
Okay, Anna, you see me? I'm dashing up. Anna?
You're powered up.
Get John me behind.
Revolve. Genji's in dropship. Dashing down.
Wow.
Alright. Yeah, we won this. I just hold this.
We're just going up top.
Genji top. Diva's at the bottom.
And just top right, he's good.
He's top on bridge.
They have blade.
I'm just holding a blade.
Over the right.
They also have grab.
I slept.
I got
He's one.
You're going to be okay.
You must have grab. I'm not there,
top,
but
watch
you can still probably...
Take your medicine.
They have grab.
We have blade and grab.
They have Shatter, they probably have grab.
I'm gonna try and deflect it.
They have no widow.
They use
Grab
all.
it. I got still naded, dude.
Some purple. As you guys can see from those clips, there are a lot of different things you can call out in Overwatch. Things from team comps to the enemy team positioning to your positioning, where you're moving, the targets you're focusing, your the dives from your tanks, your ability usage, your ultimate usage, all of those things come into play when you're making callouts. And I really hope that these examples were sort of a good way to see how people tend to talk in Overwatch. Now, as you can see, some of those callouts were a little more vague, some were more clear. I don't always hear all the callouts, as you saw with that the Genji clip, but you know, it's important that you still make these as much as possible and do your best to be as clear as possible and to make sure everyone is on the same page. With all that being said, guys, remember, callouts are important for players of all skill levels. This is not just for masters and GM, right? Anyone can do this. I understand not all ranks will have this level of communication, but it's worth it to at least try. Please remember that one of the only ways to get better at callouts is to actually make them yourself. Listening is one thing, but having to think on the fly, call things out as you see them, it's a really, really good skill and demonstrates a deeper understanding of how the game works. You do not have to always be right. Sometimes the best way to learn is to be wrong. And trust me, when you're making calls, you're going to call the wrong thing every now and then, and it's going to lead to probably your team losing, and that's fine. Just remember that these callouts should never clutter your comms. They should be clear and easily understandable by everyone on your team. Every role has specific callouts that I think can be attributed to them, but it's perfectly fine to step up and make calls for those who are not talking quite as much. But with that being said, guys, practice truly does make perfect. Learn the maps, learn team comps, use this game sense knowledge to make better callouts. And with that being said, I hope you learned something new, and I will see you guys next time. Take it easy, and peace.